You should have responsibility for your own company and your own customers. It's not what the trade body's there for. They maybe lobby for you, but you're the one that has responsibility. These are your users and it's your company.
By making people spend up front, they are also emotionally committing to your game, their retention will go up. And the first spend is what breaks the ice, then they think of themselves as spenders in the game. It's okay for me to spend in the game.
So you don't think it's necessary to comply with data regulation and laws by establishing the age of the people who play your game?
We don't.
Video games have been around for 50 years now. In this time gap, they've grown from pixels to massive worlds and entire communities. Graphics would see improvements, game companies grew, and scale for game creation has never been bigger. The industry today is worth $180 billion. But where's all this led to?
There's an actual war on teabagging going on right now in gaming.
The remakes, the money traps, the currencies, the horrific workplaces, the nosedives in quality. After playing an entire classic series of older PS1 games and then logged back into the mundane world of modern gaming, it felt jarring. And it brought some of the ugly differences into a steamy, smelly light. I felt like I needed to talk about them, so I've done my best to research everything I can and expose the most troubling parts of everything, but this is going to be a long one, so you might want to grab yourself some popcorn, climb into your most comfortable gaming chair, and get cozy, because this is the state of video games. There was a time in the gaming industry when you just purchased a game and it was a complete product. Done deal, no additional strings, no argument, no guinea pig experiments, and the majority of games that got produced had some level of passion behind them. Even the failures. This complete product transaction lives on today in rare releases like Elden Ring and Resident Evil Village. But when gaming was a fresh new concept, this standard was everywhere. Companies had no idea what people wanted out of them. Game developers were just a bunch of computer nerds like me that just wanted to make something that everyone could enjoy, and publishers were more worried about risking their reputation on a bad product than letting one release. It was a pioneer generation in gaming, where game developers were free to get experimental and pour their hearts and souls into their crafts, and find out what people liked the most. Nintendo tried to put you into a Gundam from the elbow down. Microsoft was busy crashing MS-DOS 4. Sony was only known for their cassette players, and Atari was gearing up to sell itself to Hasbro because the game Frogger was too intense for public at the time. In the beginning, games were just basic pixels with goals attached to them. And as things kept developing, technology would catch up to developers' ambitions, and different genres would start to shift the dynamic of what games were capable of bringing to their audience. Eventually, Sony and Microsoft would join the console party, and for a shared $60 price tag, title after title was geared towards selling you the best gameplay experience possible. Everything was polished as much as possible before it went out the door because there were no updates, there were no bug fixes, no patches, and no apology announcements. Either your game was fun and playable once it was put on shelves, or it was never heard from again. As a result, quality was typically top-notch for its time, and buggy releases were rare and stuck out like a sore thumb when they happened. Gameplay and graphics are at the top of priorities, and it was a pretty great time for gamers. There were a lot of moments as a kid where I'd often wonder just how much better things could possibly get. When games started to allow online play with friends, for a very short time there was a golden age of top quality multiplayer games that had fun at the center stage. Smaller titles and studios could typically get away with focusing on one particular niche concept for their game, but if you were one of the big boys, you had a compelling story in your game on top of multiplayer. It was a time when gamers and developers alike could pop some champagne and celebrate when a AAA title got released. A fresh and innovative experience was brought to the doorstep of gamers everywhere, and it seemed like everyone was on the same page. Gamers wanted to pay for an epic experience, and companies wanted to bring them to us. This is why every single person was absolutely hyped to be in these waiting lines in the middle of the night. This is why AAA titles were considered the best possible experience your $60 could purchase. And this is why publishers like Activision, Bungie, and Blizzard rose to become iconic names in the first place. And if you ask me, this is when the industry cared the most. The industry as a whole has attracted a lot of politics over the years, and I'm not going to go in a whole lot of detail on this because I personally hate politics, and the Actman does a fantastic job of detailing the subject. If you somehow haven't seen his content, you're missing out. Link is in the description for that video. But the main thing to take away from this era of politics in gaming is that politicians would often blame video games for gun violence.
These studies have been focused primarily on television. Violence in television says that aggressive behavior is stimulated by watching this.
To date, there's no evidence that there is a linkage between video gameplay and content and aggressive behavior in children, at least none that we've been able to turn up.
In 1994, a collection of video game companies met with Congress to discuss the formation of an independent ratings board that would monitor the published works of video game companies. This particular hearing happened because of Mortal Kombat's fatality moves in a game I've never heard of called Night Trap.
For games like Night Trap and
You decided not, for instance, to produce or market Night Trap.
Nintendo does not do Night Trap.
Versions of Night Trap, I gather, are still available in the 3DO.
Our Night Trap title?
it has removed one of the worst offenders, Night Trap.
Keep your eyes open and watch out for the other girls. I'll be right back.
But because video games were still somewhat in their infancy and things like DLC and microtransactions had yet to happen, the only discussions that took place were about things like excessive blood and sexual content, and the entire game industry was then left to its own devices from there. Some politicians were starting to take notice of current activity,
the spread of predatory practices in online gaming,
but very little is actually being done about it. A ratings board for video games is just as important as it is for movies. As a parent, there are things you may not want your kid to be exposed to, like blood or sex or cryptocurrency. So a ratings board was developed in order to keep harmful interactivity away from children. Their focuses were nudity, violence, gambling, and drug use, and it would rate games into their respective age groups in a similar manner that movies do with their ratings. Rather than posing actual regulation on the industry, Congress decided to let the industry regulate itself.
We want you, and not us, to develop a voluntary rating system. We want you, and not us, to let parents know what they are buying for their children.
Since then, there's been a few examples of game companies showing that they're completely capable of policing themselves.
When we first designed Kubro's, or myself, when I first came up with the Kubro idea, we wanted people to be able to change the fur pattern and colors. So we had a lever, basically, for all intents and purposes. It was a button you could push and it'd be like, oh, if you want to pay, I can't remember what it was, so much platinum, you can change the color. And then you could take an imprint of that and you could trade it to someone else. So it wasn't, like, we're trying to give you a way to, like, you could get something cool and then you could give it to your friends. And we saw, a guy pulled the lever like 200 times. And it's just like, oh my dear God, what have we done? We've made, we've created a slot machine.
Right.
And so, it was a couple days. I think it took us to take it out, a day and a half.
Within a single day of Warframe's developers realizing what happened, they were able to pull the feature from the game and even called it what everyone knew that it was, a slot machine.
Now, there are countless examples of genuine corporate responsibility. But there are just as many examples of corporate irresponsibility. From polluting factories to unsafe automobiles over the years, to the sale of poison gas facilities to Libya, and the sale of nuclear and missile materials to Iraq, the world is filled with people who, for a quick buck, are ready to create not just horror shows in a child's bedroom as he plays with these games, but horror shows in the real world. So self-policing must be effective in order to be an acceptable substitute for government action.
What happens when policing themselves independently fails?
The casting of any children in an ad, whether it's a print ad or whether it's a television ad, has got to reflect the suitability or the age appropriateness as designated by the rating. If a product is intended for a 13 to 17-year-old audience, it shouldn't be advertised on a show that predominantly has an audience of 4 to 6-year-olds.
It's not gonna work.
And we know one thing. A 9-year-old wants to have what a 13-year-old has, and what a 13-year-old thinks is desirable.
When you can consciously slap an E for everyone sticker on a product like this, something is very wrong. Companies are becoming cartoonishly evil with their monetization. Kids don't have incomes. I'm not really sure what's so difficult about this concept that ratings boards can't seem to figure out. They were developed for these very problems, and while they're really concerned if children see blood or not, they're completely fine with ridiculous monetization made for incomes that no child could possibly possess. Nothing makes sense anymore. Kids are being treated as if they need to be shaken down on street corners for every penny they have if they ever want to express themselves in the game that they love. And nobody bats an eye anymore because this is just how far things have been allowed to get. I remember when I was little, I told my mom to write a check for everything because it was just a piece of paper instead of real money. Because I was stupid and had zero understanding of how real money worked. And I guarantee you there are kids out there right now spending their family's life savings because they don't have any concept of money. There are parents out there that have no idea how to use parental controls because they may not be that involved with technology. There are parents out there that just wanted to make their kid happy by getting them the latest title with their friends. There are parents out there already busting their asses at 3 different jobs to keep their family afloat. There's parents that have kids like I was that would just try and find ways to get around parental blocks. There are kids that will steal their parents' credit card not understanding anything other than putting the numbers in.
Parental controls that are in place, a parent can go in, enter in PIN information, and control a number of features where you can go into parental controls.
And inform parents about those tools.
Parental controls as well.
They can set parental controls.
A parent can, parents can monitor playtime. Some of these parental controls.
To provide tools and reporting for
parents. As part of our parental controls, you can control. That's where, by participating in things like age ratings boards and councils and utilizing the parental controls that exist on these systems.
So, you said a lot about parental controls. You seem to be shifting responsibility to the parents in your answers.
No, I think I would characterize it as we provide tools and we support tools.
If I was a parent who was concerned about my child's use of Fortnite, I think listening to your testimony would not give me any encouragement at all that this was an issue that you cared about.
I think we do care about it, and I would actively encourage those concerned parents to use the tools and measures that we have in place.
So it's the parent's responsibility, it's not yours.
Yeah, I heard that about parental controls earlier on, but so if a 15-year-old boy turns up at or a 15-year-old, you could be a girl for that matter, and turns up at a casino and tries to walk in or a betting shop, is it the responsibility of the parents to stop that child going into that betting shop, or is it the owner of the betting shop? Do you take... Well, you are allowing these children to have access without checking their age before they can access your game. Seem to be taking no responsibility and no duty of care at all.
Ah yes, nothing says E for everyone like needing parental controls. With all this on top of ratings boards being so deliberately misleading, parents can only handle so much. Parents are already purchasing an E for everyone product for their kid, so why in the world would they expect to have to deal with parental controls in the first place? There are kids that turn to video games to escape a shitty world that's completely out of their control, and this is what makes it so scummy to me. Companies no longer just want to make money, they need to make record profits every year or they're not happy, and they'll intentionally put children in their crosshairs if it means an extra buck regardless of the damage that it's doing to people's lives.
When you design the games, what thought is given to the psychological well-being of the people that will play them?
I'm here to talk about monetization. It's Let's Go Whaling. It is about a summary of a huge bunch of behavioral psychology. Then think about how you want to get to your millions. By making people spend up front, they are also emotionally committing to your game, their retention will go up. And the first spend is, it breaks the ice, then they think of themselves as spenders in the game. It's okay for me to spend in the game. To try out a free-to-play game, then you build it into a habit that you play multiple sessions every day. You sell convenience to the achievers, which really means faster progress. Customization to socializers, hats and stuff, competitive advantage, that is pay to win for the killers, and content for explorers, which are sort of slot machines that give you collectible stuff. People like the lottery part of it. This is how we build habits. There's a trigger to remind us to do something, then we go do an action, we get the variable reward, just like the gachas, we get the lottery ticket, and then, to really hook it down, we need to ask people to do something for us, do a little bit of work, because then they become emotionally attached to that. Make sure that your games aren't too skill-based. I made that mistake myself. A too skill-based game, you don't get people to pay you, because there's no reason to. So make sure grinding and paying are legitimate versions of progressing in the game. And that's how you can make them spend a lot as well. This is also where you get basically unlimited upper spend. I'll give you a slight upside if you pay me. They will spend a lot. And then threaten to take it away unless they pay up. This is a brilliant way to get more people to spend more.
Going back to my original question about whether or not you have any psychology input into the design of your games, do you have any people that do that?
Any psychology.
You will never be able to convince me that a billion-dollar company can't be held responsible for keeping harmful monetization out of their own children-approved products. While it's true that some responsibility rests with parents, parents do not develop these games and slap an E for everyone sticker on them. Parents trust the sticker, and nowadays don't even see a sticker because everything is digital and free nowadays. I'm not joking. Pause the video and try to find a single age rating on any of these games. An Irish family lost their entire month of wages because their mother trusted a sticker on a game that said E for everyone and purchased FIFA 18 for her son with her debit card. What a terrible crime of not studying every inch of this children's approved product that she should have to lose an entire month's of work earnings.
But, I mean, there was a story in the British press earlier this month about a 6-year-old who was using his uncle's account on PlayStation to play Fortnite and spend £1,600 in a single day.
It's not that these situations can happen, it's that they already have. And game companies will fight tooth and nail to argue that we want this aggressive monetization in our games. That it's totally fun to need to open our wallet to play as the character that we want or express ourselves with cosmetics.
We have implemented these kind of mechanics, and FIFA, of course, is our big one. Our FIFA Ultimate Team in our packs is actually quite ethical and quite fun, enjoyable to people.
People like the lottery part of it.
It's grown too obvious to me that game companies are incapable of policing themselves, so I welcome the idea of politics intervening in this particular area at this point.
Major platforms making very large amounts of money for millions of people should have some sort of duty of care of the way people use their product.
Okay, let's wash our hands of all that red tape for a moment and talk about my favorite subject in gaming. Art. There's people in the world that actually try to argue that games are not art.
Video games are going to become a new art form. I don't think they're there yet. They're fun. They're not art.
that there's nothing gaming can bring to your life, and while there is a small argument to be made on why video games are not art, at the end of the day, it truly depends on the game. Every video game on the market has the potential to become more in the same way that movies and TV does. You wouldn't consider a live football game on TV art, but you could absolutely consider the movie Remember the Titans art because it goes beyond simple goal-oriented entertainment, and it dares to bring you something deeper with it. You wouldn't consider the TV show Cops art, but you could absolutely consider the Law & Order SVU show art, because it comments on real issues in the world and tries to make you think. In that same manner, you probably wouldn't consider Madden 2022 art, or even a good game for that matter, but you could absolutely consider BioShock, The Last of Us, Final Fantasy VIII, Halo, God of War, Resident Evil, Fallout, Uncharted, and even Modern Warfare 2 art. In the same way a movie can make you think or a TV show can move you, video games can completely immerse you into a setting and its lore. If you're wondering just how much games can bring to your life as an art form, just look at these clips and decide for yourself.
Satisfying when we actually solve the puzzle. Okay, so...
Surprise!
Oh, you...
Doing it now.
Fucking... Fuck.
In the end, what separates a man from a slave? Money? Power? No. A man chooses. A slave obeys.
I don't know, something's in the room with us.
No! Look behind you! Oh, shit!
Dumb.
Oh my god.
Oh no.
No, no, no. No, baby. No, 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 no.
They make you feel, they make you think, they make you question norms and experience everything firsthand. And when a game can bring something more than simple entertainment to the table, it can absolutely become more than what most individuals in the creative industry give it credit for. When you hear about gamers getting upset that their experiences are being cheapened, paywalled, stripped down, or simply absent altogether, it's moments like these that are at stake. It's your freedom to express yourself with your friends, your creativity, and your virtual escape from the world that's at stake. A window into an experience that you otherwise never would have been able to have. It's these very things that games are starting to lack these days. Everything is monetized, your experiences are becoming paywalled, and all of this is watering down every ounce of potential that a game can really have to become more. And it's unfortunate, but most AAA games rarely consider the art form anymore before considering your wallet. Instead of providing you with a front row seat to an experience in the way that movies do, video games can allow you to live in it.
You move along on the counterattack, you shoot all the Germans in the back as they run away and retreat, because of course you do. It's a video game. When you see a person in enemy uniform, you shoot them without hesitation because you're supposed to. It's just what games are about. But then you drive along and you see this. The importance of this moment and the effect that it had on me cannot be overstated. This was the moment that just broke me as a person. That grown man was terrified like a lost child, crying for his mother. And then I had to decide whether I was going to shoot him. And this moment was one of those rare moments in fiction that helped me understand an aspect of humanity that I had never been able to imagine before. The effect this had on me, you can't achieve that in a movie.
Games can impose important questions to you. They can allow you to explore your love for creativity. They can completely captivate you with their visuals. They can make you laugh, they can make you cry, and if that's not an incredible art form, I don't know what else is. Now, when I talk about art in video games, there's nowhere in that equation where NFTs play a role. When NFTs were blowing up, CEOs were foaming at the mouth to try and somehow implement their blockchains and their cryptocurrencies into video games. Ubisoft got particularly heavy-handed with this mentality, attempting to convince media outlets that users don't get what a secondary market could bring to them, without giving a single positive reason on why they should exist at all. Video game CEOs everywhere jumped on this buzzword when it first showed up and tried to convince everyone that it was the way of the future, when the only thing it would be doing is filling their pockets every time an NFT sold. NFTs gained extreme popularity after an artist by the name of Beeple sold his artwork in an auction that would amount to $3.5 million in cryptocurrency. And if you're wondering how something like that could possibly benefit video games, you'd be right to question it. CEOs will bet their entire company's future on these digital images and swear up and down that they will be the future of gaming. To this day, I still have no idea what NFTs could possibly do for video games or even the art community for that matter. And more often than not, people's artwork is just getting stolen and minted into illegitimate ownership and then sold to most buyers having no idea where the artwork even came from. Crypto bros everywhere will tell you that this is the way of the future. But it's in their interest to. They've invested money into it, and the moment they convince you to do it as well, they get a little bit richer.
Give me money. Money me. Money now.
If you turn on any game these days, there's a massive chance you're going to be met with some fake currency and a way to purchase it with real money. In some cases, monetization is necessary to keep a game going. I'm pretty sure Fortnite would have ended as a live service long ago if they gave the game away for free and then didn't sell anything in it. But some people use the free-to-play excuse as a shield to justify completely absurd prices. We live in a world where some game companies believe 4 to 5 weapon skins in a video game should cost roughly the same as a used console. Expressing yourself in a game now costs more than the game itself would have. You'd be surprised to learn that the very first microtransaction didn't actually come from EA or Activision. I was pretty shocked to learn during my research that the very first microtransaction for a major publisher was actually Bethesda. Elder Scrolls Oblivion released a horse armor for $2.50, which everyone thought was outrageous for the time. But because there are people like this, Bethesda turned a profit on it, and a terrible message was sent to the gaming industry that we're completely fine with being charged to express ourselves on top of paying a full price for a game. This horse skin spiraled into so much mayhem and greed that it's difficult to say whether things will ever actually change or not. Even from the beginning, gamers had a bad taste in their mouth from the notion of content being deliberately held back to be sold separately later on to them. And microtransactions are handled in so many different ways that it's a bit difficult to break down. Some companies will make it to where you can purchase their virtual currency in set amounts, but will deliberately price things so you can never make a direct purchase, and often be forced to spend more for the thing that you actually wanted. Imagine you're in Walmart, but instead of just buying the thing that you wanted, you're forced to purchase Dogecoin. Now imagine that you can only buy Dogecoin in specific amounts, but you only came into the store for a very specific purchase. Congratulations, you've experienced the most common form of microtransaction. Some companies will deliberately make a full game, then lock portions of it away in paywalls. Some companies will charge you a fee to express yourself in their game. Some companies will heavily rely on predatory monetization, and some companies even have a stock market for their games. It's a bit of a wild west when it comes to how companies want to monetize their games, that exploitation is almost commonplace now.
Which are sort of slot machines that give you collectible stuff.
Loot boxes take many forms, but their ultimate purpose is to hold extremely desirable game items behind different percentages to win them. In the way that slot machines entice you to hit that jackpot, loot boxes entice you to keep spending until you get that favorite cosmetic, until you get that gameplay boost you wanted, until you unlock that game-changing character that nobody else has. There's a good reason that commerce doesn't function that way in the real world. People want what they pay for, not a chance to win it. Thankfully, loot boxes are seeing a massive decline, but who knows what next awful thing that they have planned to exploit people even more.
But I just paid full price for this game.
Yeah!
It's true that in order for a game's servers to be kept going over the years, a lot of maintenance, patches, updates, and testing needs to happen, and it does take money for these things to take place. But when things get predatory, there's no longer an excuse. Dead by Daylight charges a small $20 fee for the game as a whole, but because they have servers to run and IT people to keep the servers up over the 5 years it's been alive, they have it extremely reasonably monetized. New survivors are coming out all the time, some famous, some original. Killers are being added constantly, new maps are all over the place, game mechanics and perks are being created to keep the game fresh, and the best part is, they don't charge you the price of an entire game to get cosmetics and new characters. If you see something you like, you just buy it, or in most cases, unlock it with the game's in-game currency that they give you tons of. There's no rolling for a chance at the thing that you want, no $60 price tag for a weapon skin, no 40 different types of currencies to confuse you, and their season pass is $10 and filled with goodies and cosmetics even without buying it. Personally, I'm one of the people who appreciates fair prices, so I hand this game my money all the time. Meanwhile, a game like Battlefield 2042 will charge you a full $70 while having no story campaign, 3 game modes, and 7 maps, all while holding cosmetics hostage in a $15 season pass like it's on some sort of checklist. It's true that a live service is proven to need an ongoing flow of money, but Dead by Daylight proves that it can be done in a tasteful, consumer-friendly way and still thrive.
Do you guys not have phones?
Yeah, you guys all have phones, right?
Everything's going free to play these days. Ultimately, it means that a game can be more accessible than ever. Friends everywhere can join on the same game together because there's nothing barring you from entry regardless of price tag or age. It means they can provide you with alternatives to games that cost money as well. But it also means that even a squirrel could download Fortnite on a PC and put your mom's credit card info into it. It also means ridiculous amounts of different in-game currencies that try to confuse you into spending more, monetization that holds pay-to-win mechanics behind a paywall, and cosmetics hostage for these kinds of prices. Diablo Immortal is a free-to-play title, and where I've heard a lot of people legitimately compliment the gameplay, its monetization is so disgustingly greedy that you either need to spend over $100,000 or spend 10 years of playtime to reach maximum level. Overwatch went free-to-play.
Quick, to the Birdmobile!
They had to set a new precedent that their skins are now as valuable as the entire previous version of the game. It is completely possible for free-to-play games to exist without scamming players, and there can be a lot of positives from free-to-play games. But nowadays, when you open up a free-to-play game, you have almost no idea what kind of greedy shit that they're going to push onto you.
$60 for this bullshit? This is over.
While Donkey is right, and free-to-play titles are becoming more and more common, a lot of it has to do with the fact that $60 titles nowadays are no longer complete products. Paying $60 these days typically ends with a buggy, unfinished experience that still somehow can't help but ask for even more of your money.
Bruh, they're selling stuff they didn't even finish programming.
Full $60 experiences are becoming more and more rare, but they are still around. Resident Evil Village is a perfect example of a complete modern-day $60 package. There's no season pass, no NFTs, no loot boxes, no cosmetics paywall. This game has collectibles, secrets to discover, new characters to play as, new weapons to unlock, cosmetics to unlock, and lore to read about, and I honestly couldn't recommend titles like this more to my friends because it's exactly what gaming used to be and still should be, a complete product. The moment you start trying to add monetization onto a $60 price tag, you're going to start pissing people off, and rightfully so. Companies will legitimately wait until their $60 game is rated and launched before quietly adding unskippable ads, outrageous microtransaction prices, and overall scummy monetization into it. There are games that promise straight to your face that there will be no game-changing microtransactions, only to wait until their game has been released to add them. After really thinking about it, I'm not really sure why this isn't considered false advertisement. When you consider the fact that games allow you to pre-order before their releases, how is that not considered false advertising? Publishers will allow you to spend money on a product before it's even released based on the hype they generate for it.
All the content we ever put out for Fallout 76, all the DLC, all the post-launch stuff, is going to be free. That's important. And to say the Atomic Shop is cosmetic stuff.
And I would say for any FPS going out forward, we will always have split screen in going forward.
What about the microtransaction? Will there be? Thank God. Okay.
And then will completely remove promised features and add some way to exploit people after release. Companies seem to be free to go on stage at conferences and say whatever they want about their games these days. At this point, it's difficult for me to take anything they say seriously anymore. In the case of Fallout 76, this $60 game was a complete broken mess. The website was a complete broken mess. The bag they promised was a complete broken mess. The liquor bottle was a complete broken mess.
That's terrible.
But you know what did work? The Fallout 76's in-game store, where they falsified a sale on Christmas items and then changed it when people started noticing. Merry Christmas, Bethesda. The $60 price tag has become an experimental battleground for companies to simply see what they can get away with before too many players grow tired and delete it from their lives. Companies seem to be free to extend their greed wherever they want, and while video games continue to go unregulated in that area, it will only get worse. The good news is that indie developers everywhere are giving people more and more reasons to never drop a single cent on AAA gaming. I'm tired of turning on an entertainment product that I bought to escape a shitty, greedy world, just to be reminded how shitty and greedy the product that I bought was on top of it. The $60 complete game is still a great deal, but the ones that give it a bad name are riddled with extra slot machines, ridiculous monetization, and anti-consumer practices. Companies will tell you how sorry they are for their broken, buggy-ass game, but will make sure that their store and ridiculous prices work just fine. If they're not hitting record profits, they're laying off large amounts of staff to make sure they do. The moment an inch was taken with that DLC Oblivion horse, a mile had been drafted to test just how far these ridiculous monetization systems can go. And it's brought me to the point where I just simply uninstall or refund games that are incapable of caring for its players or community. Personally, I would love to go back to the simple days where $60 gets you a complete experience with no extra transaction needed bullshit attached. Consumers everywhere are returning to older games in droves, and it's because they want a game to play, not a store to buy things in. They want a story to experience, not a way to pay to skip it.
That's my only real motivation, is not to be hassled. That and the fear of losing my job, but you know, Bob, that'll only make someone work just hard enough not to get fired.
I'd like to make one thing very clear. None of the boneheaded industry decisions I've discussed in gaming are being made at an employee, modeling artist, texturing artist, animator, or game coder's level. They're just following orders. A game coder created this store and these prices because someone way above him told him he had to do it for his job. Modeling and texturing artists created these cosmetics for you to love and enjoy and express yourself with, but someone above them decided it was going to be locked behind a ridiculous price tag. It's easy to forget that the creation of our games comes from real people with normal lives and struggles just like me and you. Most of them just want a great game for everybody just the same as us. This used to be such a creative and artistic medium, and products that were made by teams of passion-driven people have now been turned into bleak production assembly lines, where workforces are deliberately stripped down to skeleton crews of people just to have absurd deadlines pushed onto them. Hearing about some of the abuses that employees have experienced makes my skin crawl. While you and I were waiting on the next character to be dropped for Overwatch, there were bro dudes at Blizzard getting drunk in the middle of the day and crawling under women's cubicles while they were trying to work, and stealing breast milk from the company's nursery. While people were awaiting the next Assassin's Creed, abusers were getting promoted or moved after harassing employees. I'm horrified at the kind of things we probably don't know about after hearing so many things escape the surface over the years. Major game companies everywhere are seeing their employees stage numerous walkouts to protest harassment, racism, and forced arbitration. You might be like I was when I did my research and asking yourself, what's arbitration?
Do you know what it means? Yeah, I asked a cop once. It means up yours kid.
Arbitration might sound like what comes out when a lawyer sneezes. In reality, this word is a serious nightmare for people that have it in their contracts, and it baffles me on how it's legal to do this to people. Arbitration is an agreement that forces employees to settle legal disputes against the company outside of a court system. Meaning employees have to give up their right to go to court. You heard that correctly. In order to work for a company, you have to give up your constitutional right to use the justice system against them if they do anything wrong to you. Have you discovered that the game company you're working for is funding illegal activity, harassing, or racially discriminating against employees? Well, arbitration silences all of that. You don't get to take anything to court. You get to be taken to a room to talk to the company directly, and their friends will be the one to judge you. Oh, and you're not allowed to bring any evidence or even testify about the issue. We now live in a time where companies can act as judge, jury, and prosecution to their employees, where a contract in a company can completely erase an entire amendment of the Constitution. Things have definitely gotten better for abuse victims in this area, but there is absolutely no reason forced arbitration should exist at all. American citizens everywhere have the right to use the court system if needed. In no way should a company be able to strip you of that right for any reason, especially not a video game company. Activision strikes seem to happen almost yearly now, after 200 of the studio's QA team got laid off after they were promised full-time positions at the company.
They let go a third of our department with very little warning.
Riot Games actively ignores the frat culture that exists within their development team and has suffered multiple employee strikes because of how bad it's got. Bethesda shoved 16 times the detail and 4 times the size as Fallout 4 on top of multiplayer onto a decade-old single-player engine, and then handed it to its developers with a deadline. My biggest concern is that when major publishers can just impose whatever they want on their people, shield abusers, silence employees, and even keep them out of public court systems, do you think they'll ever draw a line or make things better for people on their own initiative when they have billions at their back after doing all of it? Unreasonable deadlines are pushed onto these individuals constantly so that CEOs can get their precious quarterly bonuses, and as a result, a lot of them are forced to spend vast amounts of time away from their families, long hours behind a desk at a screen, and the entire time they're hoping that at the end of whatever they've finished, they'll still have a job. I urge all of you, look up your favorite games developers and drop as much love as you can on them. Let them know how much you appreciate their hard work. Let them know how much their game means to you. and let them know that you're rooting for the industry to start changing for the better for them. They suffer all these things because they want to bring you this amazing interactive art form. They brave a storm of management greed and abuse to bring you experiences that you can love and talk about with your friends and families for years to come. They're people who grew up with heroes just like yours and mine. People who worked as hard as they could to get where they are. People just like you sitting here watching this video, and most importantly, they're people that we should be fighting alongside. They're the Master Chiefs and Jill Valentines behind all the coding and the very things that you play every day, and they deserve all our respect and admiration. Our games, our art, our players, and our developers are constantly threatened by greed, sexism, racism, and horrific leadership, and we owe it to this incredible art form to do what we can to build a better future for our games industry and put the power of our games back into the hands of the nerds that truly love making them for us. If you liked my content, liking and subscribing helps me grow and puts me closer to making this a full-time job. And stay tuned because there's much more content on the way.